Well, thank you so much to everyone who has joined us for another segment of our deep dive webinar series brought to you by Virtual Vision. Our deep dive series is designed to take the questions that we at Virtual Vision hear most often related to digital marketing and organics and dive into them through casual conversation with some of the industry's experts and our partners. I'm Amanda Stichter, Chief of Operations at Virtual Vision, and I am excited to once again be your host as we dive deeper today into the topic of customer reviews. At Virtual Vision, over the past 25 years, as we have worked with customers, reviews are often overlooked as one of the key elements of a business's ability to outperform its competitors and to find success in the digital space. And so today, we will be exploring why reviews are so important to a business's online presence, and we'll be exploring some best practices for collecting, managing, and responding to reviews. Before we get started, though, let me go ahead and introduce you to the very special guests that I have joining me today from one of Virtual Vision's partners, Uberall. Welcome, Jeff and Josh.
Hi, Amanda. Thank you. Happy to be here.
Yeah. Now, why don't you guys?
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so excited. I have no doubt that you guys are going to offer some really great tidbits today related to reviews and customer testimonials. You know, I know personally I've gotten the opportunity to chat with you quite a bit over the last couple of months. And so I'm excited to kind of put you at the forefront of some of our, other listeners today that you can share your wisdom with. So why don't you guys just get started by telling us a little bit about yourself. I'm not sure who would like to go first, but why don't you tell us who you are, what your role is at Uberall?
Sure, I can jump in. Hi, everybody. I'm Jeff. I'm a partner account manager here at Uberall, and I work very closely with a number of our partners here, building strategies to help their customers improve their online visibility and manage their online reputation. I have a background in marketing, even owned my own agency for a few years. I love to tell everybody that during that time, I made every mistake in the book that a small business owner could make, which I think was a really valuable time and a really incredible growth experience, and gave me the perspective to really truly understand the mindset of SMB owners and managers. So really, really valuable time. But excited to be here. And reviews are, as Amanda mentioned, a very valuable topic that are often neglected. And I know that Josh and I are ready to geek out and talk to you about that.
I love it. Ready to geek out. This is my kind of talk when we can say that about these sorts of things. So awesome. Josh, can you give listeners a little bit of intro to you?
Absolutely. I'm Josh, and I'm a senior partner success manager at Uberall. I work very closely with Jeff, and it's an absolute pleasure to be here with everyone today. My job is really focused around helping our customers utilize our platform from an operational standpoint. So I partner with them to do things like build out their support strategy, and reputation management is something that I'm very closely involved with and very excited to talk about with everyone today.
Awesome. Thanks, Josh. Thanks, Jeff. I appreciate you guys just sharing a little bit. Before we really dive into the topic, I know that we do have some that have registered for today that might be new to Virtual Vision. So I'm just going to give a little bit of a background to Virtual Vision. We are a premier digital marketing partner for the service-based industry, and we have been doing this for more than 25 years, since 1997. In fact, we are trusted by some of the industry's top partners to help really bring digital success to those that we work with. And you'll hear me say time and time again that we are a digital marketing partner, because we are not a company that wants to work with you and just set everything up and then say, okay, have at her. That is not who we are as a company. We truly want to be someone that's in your corner, helping you fight any of the things that are coming your way, answering the questions that you have, and helping you succeed in the online landscape. So today we have a fantastic agenda ahead of us. We've obviously already done our introduction, but you can see we've got some pretty stellar topics that we're going to be diving into today that I know can relate to everyone, and questions. We're probably going to address even more than one question that we get from our customers on a regular basis. Why do reviews matter? But there's some that we're going to be talking about even more specifically. Why do I need to show my negative reviews? Why can't I get rid of those? Some really cool things that I know are going to be really valuable for those that are listening today. So as we just go a little bit further, then, guys, I guess I'll go back here. Let me start with my an icebreaker question. Before we really dive into the topic of reviews, working in the review space day in, day out, I am sure that you guys have some pretty interesting stories related to reviews. Would you be willing to share an experience with us that either happened to you or that you're aware of based on your experience that demonstrates the power a customer review can have for a business?
Yeah, I could jump in here. I was thinking about a lot about this question, prior to, and I thought we could probably talk about this for the entire, time of the webinar. So I'll try not to ramble too much. But you and I were talking last week or the week before, and you had mentioned hotels, right? And I think for me, I was in Nashville last week. I had to travel, and it took me about an hour to find a hotel is where I wanted to stay at, right? Because I was looking through reviews, and of course, location was a factor. But I was looking for the best price at the best star rating, and I'd look at the star ratings and the volume of reviews, right? And try to find, and I got lost a few times that the hotel was too loud. Bed bugs lost me a couple of times, right? Nobody wants to go down that road. And so I'll say, yeah,
Definitely not.
I think even though we have that commonality there about the hotels, I'd say that was a recent experience that happened to me, and I recognized how impactful it was in my search for a hotel. So I'll share that one. And Josh, I don't know if you have any that you want to kick off with.
Absolutely. So for me personally, the area where I check reviews are restaurants. And Jeff and I have traveled together. I don't know if I don't remember offhand if this is something we encountered, but I'm a person who likes spicy food, and I mean like really, really spicy. And one of the problems I've ran into in the past, if I go to a new restaurant that does spicy food, like Indian food, Chinese food, something like that, a lot of times they won't trust a new customer when they say they want something really spicy because they're worried that like maybe you're just trying to show off for your friends, or maybe you're going to send the food back because it's too hot or something like that. So I'll go to the reviews, I'll see what other people have said, and if they say like, hey, like they made it spicy just the way I want it, like this was my first time going there, then I know it's a good place for me. So that's probably the thing that I use reviews most frequently for in my personal life.
That's funny. I cannot say that I've heard someone say that they use a review to rate the spiciness of food before. I'm the exact opposite. Like if it says the food was way too spicy, I'm out. I'm not going to be there. My husband would totally be there with you though, Josh. So I love it. I love it. Awesome. Well, it seems like a really obvious place to start as the high level question of why do reviews even matter in the first place? But maybe we should start by taking a step back and saying, okay, how do reviews even work? Now, I'm asking the question, it seems like a no-brainer, but Jeff, could you just walk us through a little bit? How do reviews work and what their impact is?
Yeah, absolutely. So, many online publishers like Google and Bing and Apple and Facebook, they all allow reviews, right? And so, when we think about just what a review is, you kind of define that simply. Reviews allow customers the ability to provide feedback online about the experience that they had with your business and the level of service that they got from your business, right? And so there's really kind of two essential types of reviews. You have the star rating, which goes from 1 to 5. 1 is the worst experience, and 5 is the best experience. And you have the option to just leave a star rating review, or the second is the text review, right? And so if those wanting to leave a more detailed review can supply text to help the review. And so a couple things to note really quickly. Reviews they're public, they're highly visible to online future customers, as you can see here. They're very impactful to help drive traffic to your business, which Josh will cover here in just a bit, and why that is, and in relation to your SEO game as well. And interesting fact, one thing that really resonated with me is that customers trust reviews as much as personal recommendations. And we'll talk about a report that Uberall put out here in just a bit. But that was a factor from the review that really resonated with me. That was impactful when I read that. And so, I personally like to think of reviews as kind of an open door conversation that's happening between a customer and a business. I'll say that, like, back in the day, in order to leave feedback about an experience that you had with a business, what did you do? You picked up the phone and you had to call and ask to speak to a manager, right? And you had a one-on-one conversation with them. And that was, you got the one side of that, right? And, now, due to the advancement of smartphones and review sites, consumers have the ability to see that, right? That conversation is now public. And, we've been given the power and the voice, right, to engage with a business. So I think that's important to think about. And we have a saying here at Uberall. It says smartphones, gave the consumer knowledge, but it was the review that gave them the power, right? And so I placed an example here on the slide, and this is a 100% authentic review. As I was preparing the slides for today, I pulled this up on my iPhone, and I typed in, HVAC repair, AC repair near me, and was given a few businesses, right? And you can see the ones here, they all have 5-star reviews, but let's talk about some of the things that make them a little bit different. Volumes, of course, we go from 100, 138, 493, and then the one on the far bottom right is 1480. And so when you pull up listings in a nanosecond, your brain thinks about the listing, right? Is the listing complete? And we don't even realize that we think about these things, but is the listing complete? Does it have the right, is it full and have the right data? And then you look at the star ratings, right? And then you look at also the volume of reviews. And I pulled this one review because I want to kind of think about this throughout the course of our discussion today. And Corey here had a very poor experience, and she said some pretty powerful things. If I could leave this business less than 1 star, I would. Do not use them. That's powerful, right? Lady on the phone was rude. She talked over me. Wouldn't allow me to speak to a manager. And so for me, I'll tell you that again. I made this slide. I haven't even read the second half of the review. I was already out right away. And again, I want to call attention to this to say how that makes you feel. And you as a consumer, if you were looking for this type of service, where would you'd likely be out to, right? But there's a response below it. And there's a response here from the business. And, Corey, we deeply regret any frustration and inconvenience. We strive to provide exceptional customer service, and it's disappointing that we fell short of your expectations. We'll talk more about this example as we go, but I wanted to kind of call that out and get you thinking about, what this means for a review and how you as a consumer would kind of look at this, right? And so we can go to the next slide and kind of talk about impact. Recently, as I mentioned, Uberall published a report called The Reputation Management Revolution. And we analyzed 64,000 businesses of all types, SMBs and enterprise, all different types of businesses across 4 countries. And I'll share that with you, Amanda. It has some incredible statistics in there. But really a couple stats that from the report that really resonated with me and kind of blew me away right here. 90% of consumers read online reviews before visiting or engaging with any kind of business, right? Think about that. That's a huge volume of people. And 84% of consumers trust online reviews as much as a personal friend or a family recommendation. That one really stuck with me. You talk about impact, right? And I'll try to minimize my ramble here, but I'll tell you a personal story. My father-in-law is a business owner, retired detective, owns his own security company. And if we get together and he wants to go out to dinner, the first thing he says when we say, hey, would you all like to go to dinner tonight, is he pulls up his smartphone. He looks at whatever restaurants are near us at the time. He gets deep into the reviews and he looks at the pictures and he gets deep into the menu. And this man knows what he wants to order for dinner before he even responds and says, yes, let's go to dinner tonight, right? We have conversations periodically about, tips and tricks of, improving his reputation online. And I'm often surprised by the difference in the hats that he wears as in the behavior of him as a general consumer and his thought process about managing reviews and the importance of reviews as a business owner. There's a bit of a disconnect there, and I'm often surprised by that. And I wanted to call attention to that because I want people to think about how you, in your everyday behavior, how you look for products and services, right? And how you're implementing that in your business. So I wanted to call that out, right? Reviews, highly, highly impactful, to local businesses.
Absolutely. Now, I know, I mean, obviously it goes without saying that reviews then are very, very powerful. And obviously we've spoken to hotels and restaurants, somewhere that I can like physically walk in and consume what's being reviewed. Take Josh's example, spicy food. So, obviously virtual vision, and I know we've talked about this in a lot of the times that we've met together. The customers that we support, while they have like a brick and mortar office location, customers are not walking in, purchasing a good, and then leaving. So we work with a lot of businesses within the service-based industry specifically that provide service at the customer's home. And I know you gave an example, HVAC is very much like go provide that service. And then Corey, in your example, like left that review. Do you see reviews still having the same level of impact in a brick and mortar mom and pop type business versus a service business?
So, Jeff, you can take it if you want to.
No, go right ahead, Josh.
So I would say that all of the same considerations are in effect for a service-based business, with some additional ones. So the customer experience is still very important. Customers want to know what kind of service that they can expect when someone comes to their home to provide a service like HVAC. The additional consideration, which makes reviews important for that vertical, is that the consumer is inviting someone into their home, and there are security concerns that come with that. And there have been all kinds of scams in the past where like someone might set up a fraudulent business. They can gain access to someone's home and like copy their keys or something like that so they can come back when they're on vacation. If a service business has customer reviews that are positive, where people talk about like how polite, how wonderful this person was, what a great experience it is, it gives people confidence that this is a legitimate business. I don't need to have any concerns with inviting this person into my home to fix my air conditioning or whatever else the case may be.
Great perspective. Jeff, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
I did. I would say also adding that the types of businesses that you all manage and own, there's an emotional component to your customers as well, right? When you think of the restoration companies, you think of HVAC providers and whatnot, your customers are in an emergency situation, and they're likely very vulnerable and emotional. And so when we talk about the impact of reviews, and they, as Amanda mentioned, they're not going to your brick and mortar stores, they're searching online. So I would argue that 90% of consumers read those online reviews could potentially be higher in this vertical. They're emotional, right? It's 90 degrees or more in the middle of July, and their AC has gone out. I speak for that from experience. And their families are uncomfortable, and it's really getting really hot in the house, or they had a house fire, and they're at a time where they're probably having some heightened sense of their senses are at a heightened state, and in that case they may be more likely to leave a review, certainly if they're emotionally charged on a negative review, right? But if you're the hero and the savior, and they're feeling a great sense of relief too, they may be more inclined to leave reviews, a positive review as well. And we'll talk about positive reviews and the difficulty in getting people to to leave those as well further on down the conversation.
I appreciate that. By the way, this goes without saying, but I know that you guys have prepared some slides for us. So if at any point you're ready to say, all right, Amanda, go to the next slide, you just tell me. Okay. So looking ahead, obviously we've talked about why reviews matter and really the impact that they have on a consumer's ability to make a decision. I mean, these numbers speak for themselves, obviously. Are there any review trends that you guys would want to call attention to as we, look to how reviews not only impact consumers' decisions, but also, the influence a business can have on their local community?
Absolutely. I think we can go to the next slide. Yeah. And there may be one after that. And Josh, I didn't know if this was one you wanted to speak to.
Absolutely. So in terms of review trends, we've done a couple of case studies, and we've learned from the customers that we've surveyed that about 85% of them prefer to do business with businesses that have received reviews. It's an important consideration from the consumer standpoint. If you have business out there that hasn't received any reviews, like I know for me when I'm scrolling through listings, that always kind of begs the question, like what's going on here? Is this a brand new business? Is this a business that people don't frequent for whatever reason? And I'll usually explore further listings before I stop and make my decision. So in addition to that, the majority of customers are also unlikely to purchase services from businesses that don't reply to reviews. Engaging with customers is a very important component of this, and it's one thing to go to a listing and see if there are a lot of reviews there, but if no one's replying to them, then like the obvious implication is that, okay, this business isn't listening to customers' feedback, my experience isn't important to them, and even if they have some positive reviews and the service seems like it's okay, maybe this isn't the kind of company that I want to work with, that I want to give my business to. And Jeff, I don't know if you have anything that you want to share here.
No, I think you nailed that one. Thank you.
Realized I was muted there. So a couple weeks ago, a couple of my teammates from Virtual Vision and I hosted another webinar. We specifically talked about leads. And as one would expect, we eventually circled around to the conversation of how reviews affect lead generation, specifically like converting leads, right? And we discussed that there seems to be very much like a sweet spot for leads. And we all want to assume like aim for that all 5-star, 100% 5-star reviews. But it kind of seems like that's not a realistic expectation anymore. But rather like being somewhere between the 4.5 and 4.8 seems to be good. Why do you think that is?
So I think the reason for that is really because this is a human experience and there are people involved at all levels. The customers are people, and so are the people who work at businesses. We all know from our own experience that no one is perfect. People make mistakes all the time. Things don't work the way that they should. And if you go to a business listing and you can see that there are a few hundred reviews and every single one of them is a 5-star review with a happy customer, you know that something fishy is going on. You know that no matter how good this business actually is, there's no way that there aren't a few people who fell through the cracks and had bad experience. And like again, like begs the question, like it seems like this business is doing something fishy. Should I trust them? And I know for my case, the answer is usually no.
That's very, very helpful. And absolutely. I mean, I think it's kind of like, I know we'll get to this, but it's kind of like if I go to someone's website and I'm only seeing the reviews that they handpicked to put on their website, my first question is always, well, someone had to have said something bad. Like, I understand your homepage is probably going to feature your best reviews. That's kind of a no-brainer, but I also want to know that you handled the negative pieces in a positive manner, because at some point someone's going to have a bad experience. So I think that's good to point out. And with that, actually, I'll actually go to your next slide because I know that this kind of leads to it. So why should businesses respond to reviews regardless of what their whether it's 5-star or 1-star?
So I think there are a couple components that come into play here. It is really important for customers to know that they are interacting with a person, or that they can interact with a person. And
Mhm.
as the first time customer for a business, like, I may not have any questions right off the bat, but in the event there's a problem downstream, it's good for me to be able to just take a look at the reviews and know, like, okay, if I have an issue, like, I can leave a review here, or I can message them, and someone's going to get back to me, and someone's going to appreciate my concerns. I don't think you can really overstate how important that is from the customer standpoint. And on the other side of that, I think it's an important part for the business to be able to learn from their customers. Reviews by themselves, if you have them on a listing, like, they are helpful because they give you a snapshot of the business. But for the business to learn from their customers and understand what they might be doing right, what they may be doing wrong, how customers might be perceiving their business that is different from the way that they intend, that's important too. And one of the best ways that you can do that is by engaging with your customers. If you're replying to their feedback, you have to understand what their concerns are in order to do that. And I just kind of feel that on both ends here, it's an important part of the process for both customers and the business to better understand each other.
I appreciate that, to better understand each other. The reality is that we often look at, as a consumer that would, approach someone for HVAC service, or, something in my house, it feels like a one-way decision, but it's really not, right? And I think reviews do show that ability. There are two people involved in that transaction, and it's important to consider both parties in there, because at some point in the process, something's probably not going to go well. But if the business handles that well, as a consumer, I'm way more likely to say, well, it's fine, because I understand it didn't go perfect, but they handled it. And I like that transactional piece of that reviews can provide. Anything to add to this?
There's some pretty good statistics here, and these are extracted right from our report. And as folks are staring at them, I mean, you just hit the nail on the head, Amanda. I think it's that two-way conversation, right? I mean, reviews and responding to them is so imperative, and managing them. There's so much value. I know we'll continue to talk about the reasons why, but as you said, it's a two-way conversation. And when we think back to Corey's review on that first slide, there was a response there. And when we asked the question, how did that initial review make you feel if there wasn't a response, and would you have continued along that journey and reached out to that business? I would venture to say likely not, right? But you got that second side of the review, and just like you mentioned a moment ago, it gave you some context. Say, hey, I think this business kind of really cares about their customers, and this may have been a one-off experience, right? So I think there's some valuable statistics here, that really tell an amazing story.
Absolutely. Could you just run through these statistics? I know people are looking at them, but as we talk, maybe they can't multitask as well. If you just want to run through these, that'd be awesome.
Sure. Yeah. And we mentioned this one earlier, right? 86% of customers are more likely to shop at a business that responds to reviews. Again, a really high number. 57% of consumers say they would be not very or not likely at all to use a business that doesn't respond to reviews. Another one that kind of really resonated with me: 57% of customers won't use a business if they don't see. Now, that's both positive and negative responses, and that's a high number, right?
Mhm.
And as Josh showed the slide earlier, businesses that respond to 32% of their reviews achieve 80% more conversions than businesses that reply to 10% or fewer. We think about your reputation management plan. You think about whether or not you're responding to reviews, and are your competitors responding to reviews? Our report also kind of broke down enterprise businesses versus SMB businesses, and SMB businesses were responding to about 25% of their reviews, where enterprise businesses were responding to about 12%. So when you think of
Mm.
that, you think about, again, I'm going to use the term back in the day, before consumers had this voice with reviews and had the power of the review platforms, right? It was big brands really kind of drove they kind of drove everything, right? I mean, but now local businesses have the power to compete with these big brands, right? Through reviews, because 25%, I see that again, 25% of SMB businesses are responding to reviews. So when you start thinking about your competitors and how you need to compete with your competitors, think about that number, right? And especially when it comes to brands, only 12% of them. And all the statistics that we have here, 86% of customers, right? 57% of customers. We think about those numbers. And if you start to consider a reputation management plan and responding to reviews, how much, if you're not doing it already, how much value you're leaving there on the table, right? And this is another important one. I'll close here with it. An increase in review ratings from 3.7 to 4.4 can increase a location's conversion rate by 80%. On the
That's
slide that we saw,
huge.
huge. And on the slide we saw a moment ago where you referenced that previous conversation, and we thought about, we saw the peak happen at 4.9. I mean, when you think 3.7 to 4.4 and above, that's the sweet spot, right? And that we mentioned. So when you start to add it up and you start to think of the volume of consumers that are out there that are really paying attention to reviews and responses, and you think about the lack of responses that are potentially coming from your competitors and the opportunity that you have to jump on in this game, there's a lot of potential and opportunity there.
Absolutely. So a struggle that we hear often is that, you know, it seems like the loudest voices, the ones that leave the reviews the most, tend to be the negative ones, and that it's a struggle to get someone that's happy to tell their experience. Maybe I'm sure they're telling it word of mouth, but to actually leave the physical review. Do you guys have some best practices that businesses, especially service providers, can put into practice to help facilitate collecting reviews from satisfied customers?
Absolutely, I can speak to that, and I think we can hit exactly the next slide there. But you're spot on there. I mean, eh, I can assure that you guys that are on the call here, you're not alone. Every business experiences this same challenge to some degree, right? And then many of us have heard the old saying, if you have a good experience, you tell one person, and if you have a bad experience, you tell 10, right? And so, as I mentioned earlier, you think about the vulnerability and the heightened senses that your customers and the positions that they're in. How do you get them to the table, right? So here's a couple of tips and tricks that we've seen, especially for your line of service, right? Don't be afraid to ask for reviews. People do need that nudge to take the time to write the review, even if their experience was positive, as you just mentioned.
Mhm.
A couple of ways to do that. You can use QR codes. Those are very, very helpful. It'd be an effective way to guide customers to right back to your review page. They can take out their smartphone and scan that code and go right to a review page. I was actually at a pizza shop. I know this is a different type of business, right? But I was at a pizza shop the other day and I was waiting. I had paid. I moved over to wait for my pizza, and they had right on the counter a little flyer that said, "Hey, leave us a review on Google," and it had a QR code. And I thought, wow, very convenient and perfect timing for the presentation today. I pulled up my phone and gave them a great review. The pizza was amazing, whatever. But you think about how you could utilize that in your line of business, whether it's flyers or posters or invoices, receipts, or any of those, right? And you want to link back to those review pages, right? So whether it's your website or your social media pages, another opportunity is to maybe put something in your email signature to direct people back to your Google or Facebooks to leave reviews. And the next one is a really important one. Follow the guidelines, right? And this is a really, really important one to stop and discuss. Some platforms prohibit businesses from asking customers for reviews in exchange for discounts or other incentives. It's a very logical thought process to think about exactly what we're talking about. It's difficult to get that customer to the page to leave you a review. So, hey, I'm going to give them a 10% or a 20% discount or whatever incentive I choose to get them to the page, right? To compensate them for their time to go and leave me a review. Google would argue that, hey, you're potentially soliciting that review, right? Or you're
Right.
giving them incentives with the expectation that that review is you're going to receive a positive review, and they hold great authority, and they really really value their authenticity, and so if they find that you're in any of that practice, they could suspend your listing. So I really want to call that out, because again, for so many businesses, it makes logical sense that I have to do something to get this person over, right? So just make sure you're following, any guidelines. And remember, the goal of review generation is not to just increase the number of reviews, but you want to give an authentic reflection of your customer experience, right? And improve your business. And so often, and I know we'll get into this in a moment, but so often we're terrified of receiving a negative review, but there's some value in those too, right? So, but on the next slide, we can look at a couple of opportunities, a couple of quick ways to, solicit those reviews, right? Thank you for choosing our business. Let us know how we're doing. Drop us a quick Google review, or, any of these wordings are positive and they're professional, and you can leave them on your invoices or email signatures or things like that to try to drive some traffic there.
I think, it sounds really simplistic, but one of the easiest things that you said was just ask. So many times we are afraid to say, hey, could you leave us a review? Because of course, we don't want the negative pieces to come out, but you just got to ask, the good and the bad. It's okay to ask for that. And so I like that you said that, because it seems really simplistic, and often it's the thing we're least likely to do.
Absolutely. And we think, in the general practice of business, I came out, I serviced your AC, you were happy, your AC is on, and the gap is closed and business is done, right? You asked for a service, you paid for a service, we provided a good service, and we're out. But there's now this additional component that is just so often overlooked, right? And
Right.
as we're discussing, tremendous value in.
Right. Absolutely. Okay, so I'm going to jump quick forward. So if we're asking for reviews, you mentioned in one of your previous slides that it's equally as important than the business is responding to that review. Should you respond to all reviews, just some? What are kind of best practices for responding to reviews?
Love it. The answer in short is yes, 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 yes. You absolutely 100% should be looking at and responding to all of your reviews, the good, the bad, the ugly. Reviews and your responses, they help drive more business, right? It's not an opinion. We can cite our research and our analysis. It's fact. It's what we found. And just a 0.1% increase in the star rating of your business profile could increase traffic by 25%, right? Another valuable statistic for you. But, getting back to should you, I can't stress the importance of it enough, right? You're going to see more conversions. So you're going to get more visits, you're going to get more phone calls, and you're going to, increase your website traffic. And so we talked previously kind of about reviews acting like an open door view into someone else's experience with your business. And if you only allow one side of that conversation to exist, you're allowing that to be the implied truth, and if you think back to Corey's review in slide 1, as we already mentioned, again, very likely would have lost your business, right? And so it's really, really, really important, to respond. We saw several statistics, throughout the course of the conversation already, that 86% of consumers are more likely to purchase from a business that responds to reviews. So here's really kind of two main reasons as to why, right? You want to engage with all reviews, positive, negative, for two reasons. It showcases your commitment to your customer satisfaction and your commitment to service quality, right? Again, I'm going to say, think back to Corey's review. And in that response, they mentioned her by name. and they addressed her concerns, right? And think about how that response made you feel when you were reading it. It showed that they really cared about her experience and they were dedicated to resolving, any issues that she may have, right? And the second one that people often overlook is that when you analyze the reviews, they offer you valuable insights into your business strengths. And as you mentioned, Amanda, we're scared of receiving that negative feedback. But if you kind of spin that and look at it as a positive, and it's very valuable to see, validate whether or not your business is on the right track. Are your core values being delivered or not? Are there opportunities from a training perspective, or et cetera? Or what are you missing? Or what is the sentiment out there about your business, right? And it's providing that overall pulse, on your business.
Absolutely. Okay. So we've all been there. You get the notification that a negative or 1-star review has come up. The question we hear often is, well, can you just go remove that? So I know we've talked about responding to that review, but why can't you, quote, just remove that review? Why is that review valuable? Josh, can you speak to that a little bit?
Absolutely. And the quick and encapsulating answer to that question is that it really is not in your interest to do so, for a couple of reasons. So one is for the same reason we were talking about earlier, wherein no one is expecting a perfect experience, and if all of the feedback is perfect, it throws up red flags. People expect to find bad reviews. The bad reviews that you get should be displayed along with everything else, so that customers can have an accurate perception of the feedback from other people who have visited the business. Another component here is that people, going back to the human experience, people know how other people are, and like, I might be a reasonable person. I know that a lot of other people who are out there are not. And again, like, something I expect to see, like in any group of reviews for business, is like people who are flipping out over small things. Like, we know that happens. If I see 1-star review from someone where it's like typed in like all caps and it's about something that's clearly not reasonable, like, I'm just going to discount that as a consumer. And I think that most people will do the same thing as well. And then the aspect of review gating here is very important. And as the first bullet point says, review gating is essentially the practice of directing customers away from third-party sites if you believe they're likely to leave a negative review. The way that this works in terms of review solicitation, for instance, is if you were to send customers, asking them an email, ask them to leave a review, and like starts with the question, did you have a good experience? Like, yes or no. And if they click yes, it takes them to Google, asks them to leave a review there. If they select no, it takes them to like a web form where they basically write like an internal email that no one's ever going to see. So if you do that, that's a violation of customer trust. People are pretty smart, and I would say that most people are probably able to deduce what's going on if they get one of those emails like, oh, they only want me to leave a review if I have something good to say. Like, that's insulting, and now I can't trust the reviews either. So it's not a good thing from that standpoint.
I can go to the next slide here for you too.
And thank you. And to that point, bad reviews are an indicator of authenticity. If there are bad reviews in the mix, we know that people are we know that the reviews aren't being gated, and people are sharing how they actually feel. To the second point, it's important for trust with these search engine algorithms. And we don't have the specific details for exactly how they work, but we know that this is something that they factor for. We know that if a search engine is checking review performance and they see 100 reviews, every single one of them is 5 stars, that's enough for them to deduce that there is something going on there, and that business probably shouldn't be the top result. So you ideally want something that's like in the mid 4 range, which is perfectly acceptable for business that's doing everything right, has happy customers, and still gets the usual batch of random people who are going to complain about anything regardless and share how they feel. Um, and then yeah, like the final aspect here for the negative reviews is they are important. Some people complain about unreasonable things, and those can basically be discounted both by the business and by other customers who are leaving the reviews. A lot of people do have legitimate grievances. There might have been a problem with the service or the product that they purchase, and that feedback is important. It's important for the business so that they can learn what they need to be doing better, and it's important for other customers to see so they can see the business responding to it, and they can know that, like, okay, this person had a bad experience, this business cares about them, and they're doing something to address that.
Hmm. Thanks, Josh. So I'm going to skip ahead a little bit because we are running out of time, and there are a couple questions that I want to make sure that we have an opportunity to get to before we end our time in our webinar here today. But I think something's important. I know you guys provided these in a slide for me. I'd love to talk a little bit about the do's and don'ts, the best practices for actually responding to a review. So here you've got best practice don't. What makes these like X's do not do this?
I love these. And, we can use the Corey example of as probably your best practice do, right? We've talked a lot about that example throughout the webinar, so we can reference that as a do. And the business addressed her concerns, and they mentioned her by name, and they, really made her feel kind of special. I will say that no consumer wants to see, they don't want to be involved in the drama of a situation. And so often, I think, as we've mentioned throughout the webinar today, we don't want to receive that negative review, and we take it personally. I mean, I think if we put our such effort into our business, and we take it personally, right, and we try to negate that review, we try to disqualify that negative review, especially if, as Josh said earlier, you have someone who's a little bit extreme, in their review or their experience. We want to disqualify that, or argue that. And I picked a couple of these here. These, again, 100% true, authentic reviews that I pulled from my cell phone to reference today. And I think as a consumer, you look at these and you kind of cringe, right? You see, almost causing how pathetic to lash out for being so irresponsible. What a response that is, this man cussed at my technician and yelled and screamed his demands. I mean, it kind of makes you feel like, ew, I don't really want to be involved in their drama. I don't have the time for it. I'm moving on, and it gets to see some colors of the business. You think, I don't want to be shamed either if I have a poor experience at this business. I don't want to be blasted. And another, quick personal story. I know we're running out of time here, but I just moved to a new town, and we have a town Facebook page. And there was a service station here, gas station, automotive service station here, that apparently collects oil for any of the DIYers that want to change their own oil. There was an elderly man who just dropped off oil after hours, and the business was closed, and apparently that was the wrong thing to do. And this business went on to the Facebook page and shared the video of this man and shamed him all over. And I'm sure that, he knew right where he was going. I'm sure he probably just thought, that's where I dropped the oil off, that's where I'm going. And it was a really made you uncomfortable to read all that. Nobody wants to be publicly shamed that way. And I just think these are great examples of leave the drama behind, stay professional, stay positive, use your brand's personality, and just address their concerns.
I'm assuming then that's what's mentioned here in the best practice do's.
Absolutely. And here are there's some great examples there. You have some 5-star, and then of course we put Corey's back up as well. But even with the positives, right? Don't neglect those either. They're great opportunities for you to connect with a customer and talk about, brand loyalty, recurring customers. It still shows them that you care about them. They had a positive experience. They shouldn't be neglected either, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, you can look at these. Every one of them starts with most of them start with their first name, right? Sean, Dana, Gary. They're all personal touches, right? And so, yeah, great examples here of the do's and thanks.
Absolutely. Well, I know we have a couple more slides, but I'm actually going to skip ahead because with just a couple minutes left, I have two questions that were asked here in the Q&A that I want to make sure we get a chance to answer. So the first one is, what about spam reviews? Are they possible to get removed, or how do you respond to those?
Josh, I'll kick that one to you.
Absolutely. So it is possible to get them removed depending on the site, and if it's something you're seeing as a frequent trend where you're getting a lot of reviews that are obviously spam on the part of someone who has malicious intent. The best approach there is usually going to be to open up a support ticket and work with the site's team. They're likely going to need to do some review to ascertain first that this is in fact these are in fact spam reviews in our opinion, and then they can proceed with removing them. If you're getting a couple of spam reviews, if you get one or two and you think they might be spam, it is probably still worth responding to, and the response still counts as long as the reviews are up there until they've been removed. But if it's something you're seeing as a recurrent trend, definitely recommend going the route of talking to the site and seeing what they're willing to do to work with you to take them down.
The next question is obtaining a review, quote, acceptable if we offer our customer a gift card or a monetary offering for them in return for providing a review regardless? I mean, at least when I read this question, the first thing that I thought of, a little different, but if I order something on Amazon, you often get something in there like, hey, leave a review, we'll give you a $5 gift card if you send us a screenshot. Are there any cases in which that is acceptable, or is it just best practice to say, nope, not happening?
So I would personally recommend the best practice is probably not to do that. And if you're incentivizing people to leave reviews with things like gift cards, you can run into guidelines issues with some of the sites, and that can end up being a lot of trouble. If your missing listing gets suspended, it can be a protracted process to get that back. If you want customers to leave a review, I think the best approach to take is the one that we discussed earlier, wherein if you have a happy customer who you've built a good rapport with, just ask them. And I think especially in today's day and age, and especially for service-based businesses, I think it's an acceptable part of the transaction, especially if you have someone who's a sole proprietor. If they provide you a service and you're happy with the service, you can pay them, you can leave them a positive review, because at the end of the day, they're a person just like you who's working a job and trying to make a living, and they're helping you, you can help them. I think that's completely fine. If a business is going to offer something like gift cards, I think it's very important that not be linked to the review. So you can probably ask customers to leave a review. You can probably give them a complimentary gift card, in return for being a good customer or a loyal customer or whatever the case may be. But those two things should not be directly linked together, and they should not be made conditional upon each other.
The final question, I think, is so good. I want to make sure that we have a chance to talk through it today because it's actually one that we hear often too. So when you look at a locality, I'm going to summarize the question here. You've got new businesses, and then you have businesses that have existed for a long time. How does a new business, I don't really like the word compete, but how do they compete against a competitor in the area that's been around for a really long time and has a ton of reviews the new business has a few good reviews, but how do you compete with that and the way that it relates to search rankings and making sure that you're showing up?
So I think the key factor to keep in consideration here is competitive advantage. And if you're a new business who's getting into a space competing against established businesses, you are at a competitive disadvantage starting out. There's no question about that. And within the space of reputation management, you have fewer reviews. That's less context for search engines to work with when they're determining your query placement. That's less context for customers to work with when they're deciding where they're going to send their business. In that situation, I would say it is really important for the new business to be diligent and make sure they're doing everything they can. Like, one, to ask customers to share their experience, and then two, managing the reviews that come in, making sure that they're replying to people, making changes based on feedback, and all of those things. And time is an important factor here. It will take time for them to build a reputation, so that they effectively have parity with the established businesses, but they can do that fairly quickly. They need to be diligent, and um, another factor here is that you may be able to find gaps with your established competitors. They might be big, they might have been around for a long time, they might have a lot of reviews. They might be complacent. They might just be letting them sit and not actioning them. So doing better than your competition so that you can get ahead is one of the important principles to keep in mind here.
Yeah. And I would quickly add to that too, that, one of the components from our reputation management revolution report came out was that star ratings and the volume of reviews, the volume isn't as important as the star rating. And when you think about how you look at reviews, it has a value, absolutely, but I want to give you some positivity and look, as a new business starting out, that if you start to practice all the things we discussed today and you're responding to reviews, there's a lot of value there, as Josh just mentioned in his summary. But the star rating is more important than the volume. The volume will get there.
I appreciate that. Well, you guys, we are out of time. I know we didn't even get to anything. But I want to thank you guys for joining us for today's webinar. Before we end, do you have any final burning tidbits of wisdom that you would want to share about customers for harnessing the power of their customers' reviews?
I think you kind of said some critical words right there in the question, right? It harness the power of customer reviews and start to implement things that we discussed today. I hope that we achieved the objective to get you to start to think about them and think about how you're implementing them in your business and really understanding the value that is there, and not only just the value, but the opportunity, right, that you have to manage both the positives and the negatives. So don't be afraid to dive in. Don't be scared of the negative reviews, and good luck.
Anything to add to that, Josh?
I would just say that it's important to always treat customer reviews as an asset. And I know that businesses can look at them from the standpoint of this is an area where customers might air their grievances with you. You have to spend time reading through them, spending time responding to them, and it can sometimes seem like a proposition where this is just a pain. This is something I have to deal with that I don't want to, and it's easy to let them go by the wayside. But to all the points that we've covered today, I think that it is a really important area to focus on. And I think it's also an area where if you are diligent, if you're approaching customer feedback, customer complaints in the way you should, is treating it as something that can be constructive both for yourself and for your customers. This is a positive thing, and eventually it's going to help you both get more customers and improve your search rankings.
Well, you guys, great wisdom. I know we barely even scratched the surface of reviews today, but I appreciate you joining us and sharing your wisdom in this. And for all of our attendees today, thank you so much for joining us for another segment of our deep dive webinar series. When you do leave today's webinar, you will be taken to a screen just to give a really brief survey about today, asking you to give your feedback on our conversation, as well as share ideas for future conversations or topics that you'd like to see discussed. Hopefully today we were able to share some valuable insights with you related to reviews. And then if you want to rewatch any part of today's webinar, you will receive a link later this week to be able to rewatch that recording once it has been uploaded and processed on our YouTube channel. Finally, I have to put a little tidbit in here that I am truly honored to be hosting lots of other webinars and podcast conversations just like this one with industry experts on a very regular basis. If you follow Virtual Vision on our social platforms as well as YouTube, you can stay up to date on all of our other webinars as well as our podcasts. You can also visit virtualvision.com/events to register to be notified for any future webinars that we have. So with that, I will leave everyone. We'll go ahead and close this room, but we thank you all for joining us. Jeff, Josh, thank you so much for your time today. And I look forward to our many meetings to come in ways that we can help our customers make sure that they are harnessing the power of their customer reviews. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Thanks, Amanda.
Thank you so much, Amanda.